for joining us today. In 1991, New Hampshire was the first in the nation to close its institution for people with disabilities. We closed Laconia State School, promising a robust community-based life for people with disabilities. In recent years, however, failures to create integrated, universally designed, affordable housing has left families across the disability community lying awake at night wondering, what will happen to my loved one when I die? Able New Hampshire has taken action by forming a housing task force. The first step, the first of many steps, was an informal housing survey which yielded startling statistics. Among them, 70% of both people with disabilities and family caretakers reported a need for access to appropriately supportive, accessible, affordable housing. Additionally, about 70% of people with disabilities and their caretakers who answered in separate surveys stated that they or their loved one is presently at risk of housing insecurity and homelessness. A copy of our report is available to the public. New Hampshire knows it has a workforce housing crisis. Unfortunately, within this housing crisis, the disability community has a heightened risk of housing insecurity and homelessness. Today, we will hear stories from stakeholders and organizational partners on why and how our housing crisis must be addressed. First, I'd like to welcome Laurie Mcintosh. She is an occupational therapist and an assistive technology professional. She is also board chair of Our Place and mom. Thank you, Laurie.
So, as Lisa said, my name is Laurie Mcintosh, and I live in Dover, New Hampshire. I'm the mother of 2 adult sons with intellectual developmental disabilities, or IDD. I'm also the board chair of Our Place, an organization with a mission to create supportive housing for adults with IDD. My sons both live in Dover Housing Authority apartments, so I consider myself quite lucky. Since their apartments are subsidized through the Housing Authority, they are able to afford their rents, and which they pay with their SSI and their paychecks from part-time jobs. I know that they will always be able to afford it, which is a comfort. However, what I have learned is it is not a permanent solution. I have to spend many hours helping my sons in their apartments. One problem is that despite being in what they call a wheelchair apartment, my youngest son, who uses a wheelchair, is not able to access his kitchen and bathroom without difficulty. He really should be in a place built with universal design. Another issue is that even though they have some staff assistance on some days, they're alone for many hours each week and at night. Their cooking skills are minimal, and they need help with transportation and recreation. There are also the occasional falls, toilets overflowing, etc. It is up to me to fill in the blanks. They need to live in a place with support. According to the most recent New Hampshire statistics as of 2017, 73% of the 21,988 individuals with IDD in this state were living with a family caregiver. Here's the scary part. At that time, there were 5,974 caregivers over the age of 60, and we're not getting any younger. New Hampshire needs to face this housing crisis and find a way to find housing for all these adults that is affordable, supportive, and created with universal design. And we need to do it quickly. This population should not be lumped in with other groups who have different needs. This is not a transient group who come in with no income and huge variety of needs. This is a group of solid citizens. Many of them work at least part-time. They require a stable home for the rest of their lives, and they want to be included. So please help these deserving individuals get the housing that they need.
Thank you, Laurie. Next, we have Representative Gabby Grossman, representative from Exeter. She is a fine artist, a New Hampshire business owner, and a mom. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I'm Representative Gabby Grossman from Rockingham, District 18 in Exeter, and serve as co-chair of the Bipartisan Disability Caucus. Thank you to Able New Hampshire for shining a light on the severe housing crisis the disability community is grappling with. I am the mother of a young man who experiences disabilities, and we are beginning the transition into adulthood. It's my hope that Eli, my son, is able to live in an inclusive, supportive, and independent home that partners with his community. The severe lack of appropriately supportive, accessible, affordable housing makes me fearful for his future. As a state, we need to work together to find solutions for our loved ones that face this housing crisis. I know with the right supports and accessible housing, Eli will take his place as a Granite-stater. He will work, pay taxes, and contribute to New Hampshire's economy. Parent-driven housing is not a sustainable policy solution for New Hampshire. Families of loved ones with disabilities already provide a great deal of supports for their adult children, and no one should have to question what will happen to my loved one, my child, when I die. There are many entities shepherding the creation of subsidized housing. New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority has been playing a key role. It needs to modify the qualified allocation as a matter of public benefit to create supercharged QAP points for disability housing. Additionally, it's time for the New Hampshire legislature to face the disability housing crisis inside of the workforce housing crisis. As lawmakers, we need to create legislation to adopt the universal design standards to increase the supply of appropriately supportive, accessible, affordable housing in the state of New Hampshire. And we must enable municipalities to opt into zoning regulations that remove barriers to workforce housing, and in particular, the disabilities housing needs, which leads to universally designed housing, meeting the needs of all vulnerable citizens, not just the disability community. This problem won't fix itself. We must work together, and when we do, we will see how all citizens can benefit from these partnerships. So thank you so much, Able, for hosting this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Grossman. Next is Forrest Godwin-Freedy. He is a member of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities and the Institute on Disabilities Consumer Advisory Council. Today, Forrest will be speaking as a member of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Glad I can have my mask off now. Hi, my name is, thanks for joining us today. My name is Forrest Godwin-Freedy. I am a primary Untitled Chapter leader, and my transitioning is representing the Concord chapter. I am here today as a member of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities. The council is dedicated to dignity, full rights of citizenship, cultural diversity, equal opportunities, and full participation for all New Hampshire citizens with developmental disabilities. I am an advocate for people with disabilities as a council member. I think it's important for New Hampshire to build affordable housing for people like me who just need a little support to live independently. adults with disabilities like me should not to live with their parents. Living on my own is important to me. It is a matter of dignity. People with disabilities are a protected class of American citizens. Tell me, which other protected class of citizens are expected to live with their whole lives with their parents? The NHCDD has created a 5-year state plan to address the most pressing needs of people with developmental disabilities. Housing is an important issue on the plan because people with developmental disabilities often need support to live in and to contribute their communities in a meaningful way. New Hampshire needs to build more supportive, accessible, affordable, and universally designed housing for people with developmental disabilities and with direct care staff who support them to have full inclusion and community integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Next, we have through Zoom, Katie Phillips. Katie is a member of the Board of New Hampshire's the Board of Directors of ABLE New Hampshire, and she is currently in the New Hampshire Leadership Series, a program of the Institute on Disability, which supports people with disabilities and their family members to develop leadership skills.
All right, I will unmute.
Thank you, Katie.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie Phillips. I live in Somersworth, New Hampshire with my mother. I work about 30 hours a week and volunteer for several nonprofit organizations. I am a citizen who contributes to my community. I vote. I engage with elected officials on issues important to me and live an ordinary life in most ways, except one. I am a 30-year-old employed adult woman with different abilities who is basically expected to live with my mother forever because there is no affordable housing for me in my local community. My mom won't always be around to house me. I don't need much support, but I do need a little support. The truth is, everyone needs a little support. Most Americans have debt, which means most people could use a little support managing their finances, right? Communities are places where people have friendly neighbors, socialize, and support one another. More than half of my friends who have disabilities live with their parents. This is unacceptable. I am calling on Governor Sununu to direct all appropriate agencies to pool their efforts to stimulate the development of appropriately supported, accessible, affordable housing. The disability community can't fix this by ourselves. Let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. It's wonderful that you could join us from Somersworth today via Zoom. Next, we have Tim Mckernan. Tim is a graduate of UNH Law, is a parent, and he now serves as the Director of Advocacy and Policy for ABLE New Hampshire. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke today. It's very important to consider the experiences and perspectives of all of the stakeholders in this situation. This is a complex problem. It's been many years in the making, and there's going to be no single simple solution to it. We each have a part to play in the solutions to the crisis. Now, the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority has extraordinary power and autonomy. They're holding a public comment session on their qualified allocation plan process, which is why we're here today. New Hampshire Housing can make a long-lasting positive impact on the lives and futures of renters and homeowners and on the economy of the state. Able New Hampshire and the disability community want New Hampshire Housing to take bold, decisive action to address our crisis. A decade after decade, rents have risen. However, the limits on disability assets have been frozen for about 30 years, about when we shut down the Columbia School. This leaves people with disabilities locked into poverty and locked out of housing. Right now, our population is housing secure and at severe risk of homelessness. Able New Hampshire is submitting 10 recommendations to the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. These are centered around 3 basic concepts. First, as a matter of public benefit, we need to prioritize the production of affordable housing for people with disabilities by adopting universal design standards in the qualified allocation plan. Second, we need to build into the QAP set-aside housing units for support staff on site. Support staff housing should be placed near the clients they serve. Now, we cannot have supportive housing if support staff cannot afford to live nearby. And third, we're asking the authority to aggressively fund and encourage housing innovation and pilot programs to accelerate the production of new housing units. Able New Hampshire strongly recommends adopting universal design principles and standards as a priority when developing and building new workforce housing. The current standards for ADA accessible housing simply do not meet the needs of many people with disabilities, particularly in the intellectual and developmental disability community. Additionally, an increasing proportion of the state's population will need accessible housing as we continue to transition long-term care from institutions to home and community-based care. We must also account for senior citizens who will choose to age in place, as well as IDD young adults who are entering the housing market. By awarding additional points to applications that incorporate universal design, the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority can encourage developers to build housing that will meet the needs of the entire New Hampshire workforce housing market for decades. The present rate of affordable housing production is insufficient. A deficit of over 20,000 units cannot be addressed by creating a few dozen here, a couple hundred there. New Hampshire Housing can and must change the game by aggressively and consistently funding pilot projects and innovative techniques. And you can ask Able New Hampshire about some innovative ideas. We've been doing some research and there's a lot out there. Able New Hampshire looks forward to being a collaborator on the team building housing which meets the needs of the disability community. Thank you. Lisa.
Thank you, Tim. I want to thank all of our speakers today. 20,000 deficit unit across the workforce housing community's needs. We must act. As you've heard, the disability community is calling for immediate and long-term action on the part of all the decision makers holding their separate keys to the elements of the solutions. The New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority is tomorrow holding its public comment for its upcoming qualified allocation plan, which allocates points to developers who prioritize certain kinds of housing in their proposals. The New Hampshire General Court has a role to play. Municipalities have to change zoning practices that facilitate workforce housing and not prevent it. And of course, the governor has a role to play. All of these entities must dramatically accelerate the development of workforce housing and appropriately supportive, accessible, affordable, universally designed housing for people with disabilities, and in particular, for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. you for coming. We have some press packets. I want to thank our speakers today for sharing your stories and your insights and the data. We are open to questions now.